Hey, I'm Rob from JestaThaRogue.com and I'm going to show you how to play Final Girl. This is a game for one player, plays in about 60 minutes, is designed by Evan Derrick and AJ Porfirio and is published by Van Ryder Games. Players play in a movie as the final girl. They must try and kill a game control killer while trying to survive and rescue victims to get a happy ending. But if the final girl dies before the killer, it's time to roll credits on this particular game. So why don't you spend some time clicking subscribe for more how to play videos? It decreases the algorithm's bloodlust. To play the game you need at least two things. The first one is this is the core box. It contains the rulebook and the components used in pretty much every game. And the other thing you need is one of these. This is a feature film box and it contains three very important things. The first is the killer. Each box contains all the opponents to use the killer within that box and there is a different one in each. The second is the location and all of its components, and again there is a different location in each box. Thirdly, of course, there are two final girls for you to play as in the game. The killer's locations of final girls from across all the different feature films box can be mixed and matched so you can play any combination you like. In this video I'll be using my favourite, Once Upon a Full Moon, as the example. It picks red against the big bad wolf in the storybook woods. For setup, take the player board from the core box. Choose the regular difficulty side for your first game. You could use the extreme horror difficulty on the other side once you've won a few times. Pick a final girl, take their card and put it under the board, victim safe side up, the one with the meeple outlines. Get the killer and location boards and component trays from the feature film box. Place the killer board above the player board and place the location board next to that. Or set it up however you want, it doesn't really matter as long as you leave spaces around the edges for cards. Also, when you first play, these kind of stand up a little bit. You just need to push them back and then they will lay flat on the table. It's good to know. Shuffle the killer's finale cards and place one face down over the top half of the body. Shuffle the dark powers. Place one face down over the bottom half of the body. Before doing this, remove the epic dark power unless you want a tough challenge. Return the unused killer cards to the box. Shuffle the black final health tokens plus one side up and make sure they stay face down while you do it. Put one on the top left of the player board in the circular outline. Put another bottom left of the killer board in the circular space. Once again, return any unused to the box without looking at them. Add health tokens to the killer and player boards so the total plus the final health token equals their maximum health. For example, the big bad wolf's starting health is 9, so they need 8 more heart tokens. The heart on the final health token is their 9th. Put the Bloodlust marker on the bottom of the Bloodlust track. Put the time marker on the blue 6 space on the player board. Check the horror level of the killer, shown above the health, and place one of the 2 red killer meeples on that number of the horror track on the player board. Get the deck of terror cards for the killer and the location. On each of the decks is an icon showing which set they belong to, in this case tree for the woods and wolf for the wolf, so you can sort them out after. Shuffle both the killer and location terror cards together. Place 10 next to the location board and keep the rest nearby. Shuffle the location item cards, put 4 above each location on the board. Flip the top of each over and return the rest to the box. And this is the only time the top card is flipped face up. Throughout the game it will remain face down, unless something says otherwise of course. Randomly pick a location setup card. This will show where components are placed on the map. Put the purple final girl meeple on the final girl spot, the one with the yellow final girl icon. The other red killer meeple goes on the killer spot, the one with the sinister red K. Place yellow victim meeples on the matching spaces. It also shows you how many victims go in each space. Take the action cards, keep those showing 0 in the bottom right as your starting hand. Put the rest face up by name as an action tableau. There are multiple copies of some of these cards. Shuffle the location event cards. Put them next to the location board, then reveal and resolve the top card. For example, the fairy ring says that the victims in the glen just disappear, so remove any victims from that space from the board. The glen is one of a few named locations that some game effects will refer to as you play. And you only reveal this one event during setup, but some of game effects may cause you to put more events into play as the game goes on. Keep the 6 dice nearby. Everything else can stay in the boxes for now, but keep them nearby as they may be needed during gameplay. Okay, on to gameplay, which is played over 5 phases. Action, planning, killer, panic, and upkeep. During the action phase, you'll play action cards into a separate discard pile and resolve them. Make sure you do not mix them up with the action cards in the action tableau. Note that when playing a card you do not need to pay the cost in time. This is just to purchase the card, but more on that later. Most of the cards require horror rolls, so let's see how those work. First you will roll the amount of dice shown on the horror track depending on the location of the meeple on it. For example, if the meeple is in this middle section with the white numbers, you'll roll 2 dice. There are 3 outcomes for a horror roll: no successes, 1 success, or 2 or more successes. You ignore the number for the results of a horror roll, but the 5 and 6 have a star which is a success, and 1 and 2 are blank which are no successes. So if this was your roll, it would be 1 success. 3 and 4 are a partial success. To turn these into a success, you need to discard 2 action cards from your hand for each die face. And anytime you do this, you will convert that partial success into a success. So for the purposes of effects, it does count as you rolling a star. Oh, and just in case it comes up, you can't choose to take fewer successes than you rolled. When making a horror roll, you will always roll at least 1 die. If you're rolling more than 6 die, just note the results on the first 6 and then roll more until you've rolled enough. After rolling, resolve the played action card from left to right on the level you rolled. We'll go through these actions in detail shortly, but for example, if you rolled for the focus card, for 2 or more successes you'll reduce the horror track and then gain 2 time. For 1 success you reduce the horror attack and lose 1 time, and for no successes you'll just lose 2 time. And each step of the card must be resolved fully before you can do anything else. This includes using items and discarding cards to gain time, but more on those mechanisms shortly. Okay, let's look at the symbols on the action cards. Sprint and walk both allow you to move. When moving, move 1 space at a time down a line or through a door. You don't have to use all of the movement you have been given. And you can move into and out of the killer's space. You can also move with up to 2 victims. Simply move them with you as you go. But they are not as brave as you. They will not follow you into the killer space, but they will 100% follow you out of it. If you move into a green exit space with any victims, or the victims are already in that space when you move into it, they may be saved. Remember, the victims will only escape if the final girl tells them to, so they will only exit if the final girl is in the exit space with them. Put save victims on the final girl card and take the covered action. Most explain what they do, the rest are icons that you'll find on the action cards that we're looking at now. Once they're all covered, remove the victims and flip the card to get the final girl's ultimate ability. It will also say what to do if you rescue any further victims. On the walk card, for 1 success you'll move 1 space. Then resolve the red hourglass with the down arrow, which is to lose 1 time. Some actions also have a green hourglass, which is to gain time. When gaining or losing time, simply move the time marker that many spaces up or down on the track. On your turn, you can discard a card from your hand to gain 1 time, but not during resolving an action card as mentioned earlier. If the time marker drops below 0 at any time, the action phase ends. The time track is not limited to 12 maximum time. If it goes above that, keep track of it somehow. No successes on this card gives you 2 rows to pick from. When you see this, simply resolve one of these 2 available rows of icons. The search action allows you to search in spaces if you are in an orange search space with a spanner icon. For 1 or 2 plus successes, follow the instructions on gaining items from the location you are in and lose 1 time. Cards returned to item decks can be put back on top face up or at the bottom face down. When gaining an item, if it shows hands, it must be in the hand space on the player board for you to use it, but any item can be stored in the backpack. You have 2 hands and can hold that many hands worth of items. For example, the knife and hatchet have 1 hand so you can hold both at once. The archery bow has 2 hands, so is the only item they can hold. When gaining a new item, you can freely arrange the items in your backpack and hands. Items without hands on them, like the map, can be used from your backpack. Multiple use items have circular icons. Use tracking markers to track usage, and they are discarded when the item is used up. 1 use items are mostly discarded when used. It will say on the card. And you can discard items at any time, simply remove them from the game. The mass symbol is to increase the horror level. Increase the horror level by the number shown. This may change how many dice you roll on future horror rolls. The end of the tracks increase the Bloodlust each time it goes above 6, but we'll look at the Bloodlust track in detail when we look at the killer's actions. Focus and distraction have the crossed out mask icon, which reduces the horror track in the same way, but in the other direction. Going below 1 on the horror track will increase time by 1. Action cards allow you to attack. You have to be in the same space as the killer to use these attacks. Some weapons, like the archery bow, can attack without the use of an action card. Follow the instructions on the weapons. Others, like the knife, modify the attack and add its own damage if the attack action card itself deals at least 1 damage. Weapons also have a range. 0 is in the killer space, 1 is adjacent, 2 is 2 spaces away, etc. And range is definitive, so a range 1 weapon cannot be used at range 0. Some weapons are restricted by the attack card they modify. If the killer or final girl takes any damage, remove that many hearts from their board. When only the black final health token remains, reveal it and deal no further damage. If it's blank, they are dead and the game ends. More on that later. If not, replace the black token with a white one. Add health tokens to make up the number on the black token and discard. For example, this black heart shows 3 hearts, so add the white token and 2 heart tokens to bring the health up to 3. And if the killer and or final girl only has their black or white heart token left, the final girl gets an adrenaline rush. Roll 1 extra die on horror rolls. There is a reminder of this on the health token. And this will stack, so if both the killer and the final girl are on their health token only, then the final girl will roll a 2 extra dice when doing horror rolls. Packed action cards and the crossed out heart will cause the final girl to lose health. Short rest and long rest can help the final girl gain some health back, but they can never go over their maximum health. We'll look at guard later, but the other actions, close call, improvise and planning, are supplementary actions that make horror rolls easier. Just follow the instructions on the cards. The action phase ends if you decide to stop, you run out of cards in your hand, you resolve the X on an action, or the time is less than 0, which also shows the X. Next is the planning phase, where you use your remaining time to buy action cards from the tableau. The cost is shown in the bottom right. 0 cost cards are free and can be purchased even if time is below 0. Importantly, you can't buy cards that were played or discarded during the last action phase, which is why you need to keep them separate from the action tableau when playing cards. Also, you can't take the time below 0 when spending time, and you can't have more than 10 cards in hand. When finished, return the time token to the starting position. Put cards played and discarded this turn into the action tableau, including the 0 cost ones ready to buy next round. Unfortunately, now it's the killer's turn. First, resolve the killer's action on the finale card from left to right. Then draw the top terror card and resolve it top to bottom, left to right. The killer will choose a target, then move and or attack. If you're ever asked to reveal the terror card but the deck is empty, just ignore it. Okay, let's look at the killer's symbols. Targeting. The meeple is a victim meeple, the final girl is the final girl, and when it shows both, it's whichever's closest. The first tiebreaker is the space with the most victims. The final girl does not count as a victim. The next tiebreaker rule for this, and pretty much everything in the game, is you choose what's either worse for you or what makes the most sense thematically. Importantly, the killer will never waste an attack, so they'll always attack something if possible. The boot icon is to move. They move towards their chosen target a number of spaces and is indicated on the boot icon on the current level of the Bloodlust track. They will move up to that number, including not moving at all if they're already in the target space. The knife icon is to attack. They will attack in their space, dealing damage as indicated on the current level of the Bloodlust track per knife icon. They will attack victims in their space before attacking the final girl, unless the final girl is their target. As I said, they will never waste an attack, so they'll just attack whoever's in their space, even if they didn't reach their target space. Victims have 1 health and any extra damage dealt during an attack is ignored. Put them in the dead victims box on the player board. Increase the Bloodlust track by 1 for each victim killed, even if they were not killed by the killer. This includes any victims killed by the event card, for example. When increasing the Bloodlust track, resolve each step of the track, even if moving multiple steps in one go. When the Bloodlust track passes the Dark Power, flip over the Dark Power card. The Dark Power will provide an ability or effect for the killer. Follow the instructions on the card. If the Bloodlust track is on max, it stays there and will trigger the final effect with each increase. In the Big Bad Wolf's case, they gain a health. Back to dealing damage, and if they damage the final girl, they deal damage for each attack and resolve the black health token in the same way. But the final girl has one more trick up their sleeves. They can defend themselves. Blue action cards let you play them as a reaction to prevent damage. You can use 1 reaction card per killer attack. Reaction cards that deal damage can be modified with a weapon the same as attack cards. Importantly, crossed out heart icons cannot be reacted to. Some terror cards are minor dark power cards that stay in play above the killer board. Put health markers on the spaces. When the killer is damaged, these health tokens are removed first, and if all are removed from a card, the power is discarded. If the minor dark power is partially damaged and the killer gains health, you can restore health to those cards. After resolving the killer action, you go to the panic phase. Victims panic if at least 1 victim was killed this turn and the victim is in the same space as the killer. Roll a die for each panic victim and move them in that direction according to the number on that space. Sometimes the number isn't shown for a certain space, in which case they'll stay where they are. Also, they're not so bright and they can panic into the killer's space. And this is possible because they can panic outside of this phase by some card effects. You just resolve them in the same way. Once everyone's panicked, go to the upkeep phase. Step 1, if there are no cards in the terror deck, reveal the finale. Flip it face up, keeping it in the same space, and resolve any instant effects. Also reveal the dark power below if it isn't already revealed. The finale shows a new action to take in the killer phase. From now on, you don't reveal the terror card in the killer phase because the deck is empty. Step 2 is to perform any upkeep actions on any cards or any special rules. Step 3, freely arrange any items from the backpack and in your hand. You can only do this now and when you pick up an item. And then start a new turn. And before we look at winning and losing the game, we need to look at some other rules and red tape. Use the victim overflow boards and tokens if there are ever too many pieces in a space. These are special victims that are added mostly by events. They count the same as victims unless otherwise stated. This includes putting them on a dead victim space and raising Bloodlust when they die and adding them to the final girl card if they are saved. Some cards need tokens. The card will tell you how to use the tokens and will also show you what the required token looks like on the card. Some games have minions and the term enemies refers to both a minion and a killer. Attacking a minion is the same as attacking the killer. In the killer phase, they could activate on their own or at the same time as the killer, and in the panic phase, victims will panic as if they were the killer. If the final girl is killed, you lose. If the killer is killed, you win. And if both are killed at the same time, well, mission accomplished, I guess. You win, and that's how you play Final Girl. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when a new video goes live. You can follow me on Twitch, Insta and YouTube at JestaThaRogue, or find the blog at JestaThaRogue.com. I've been Rob, aka JestaThaRogue. I'll see you soon.